in the days to come. So they must be disarmed. Now how do you do it? They are not going to disarm themselves. It is a bargaining chips through which they can blackmail and intimidate, coerce and threaten the political parties, the people in general. And of course, as long as that armed elements are there, there is going to be no peace. And it would have a larger impact, proliferation of various types. It needs to be taken very seriously by everybody who are concerned with the security in the neighborhood. The Nepalese army was mobilized by the elected parliament according to the constitution in practice. The arms were raised against the elected parliament, don't forget. Against the elected government, don't forget. And still, the leadership is saying it publicly, that parliamentary system has failed. So they need to impose an ideology that has been practiced and exercised for 73 years or 74 years, because it could not deliver. It could not guarantee the right and liberty of the people. That was why that ideology was rejected. So in Nepal, it is a struggle between two ideologies. And I can tell you that the people of Nepal would accept an ideology which would guarantee their liberty and freedom, the universal justice and rights. But then, as long as there are armed elements maintained by a party who was also in the government and which is in the parliament, can the people be able to speak what they want to speak? Can they exercise their freedom of expression? Can they exercise their fundamental rights as you and we believe? I would say no, not at all. It's not possible. Because the only thing that the human being does not want to do is he or she does not want to die. And when someone comes with a gun, you will have to surrender because you don't want to die. How many of us would open your chest and ask him to fire? Not many. Not many. When the Nepalese king took over, dissolved the parliament, elected parliament, the Nepalese army and the security forces under its leadership was completely isolated from its own people, political parties, journalists, intellectuals and professionals, and from its neighboring countries and international community. The mission given to us was to force the Maoists to bring them to a negotiating table. And as far as Nepalese army is concerned, although we were completely isolated, we were able to accomplish the mission given to us. I would proudly tell you that the Nepalese army was able to create a large political space, a democratic political space, whereby the democratic forces could have negotiated from a position of strength and influence, which they failed. First, army's request was to disarm them. Only then they start negotiating. They had only 5,000 or 6,000 of their combatants. But they made it 34,000. Handed over only 3,400 of ragtag weapons. About 500 operational battle-tested weapons, keeping it outside the camp. But they prevailed to convince other political parties and international community that they have 34,000 combatants, which were recruited after the negotiation, after the ceasefire. As I understand, the international practice is to become a combatant, you must possess a combat arms. And that combat arms must be factory manufactured. And that particular combatant should know how to operate that particular weapon. So how can you ever imagine having 34,000 of combatants when you have only 3,400 of weapons of all varieties? The big question as far as I am concerned. And mind you, in Nepal was not Sri Lanka or any African or Haiti or Somalia or Liberia. There was no state created within a state in Nepal. There was no no-go area for the Nepalese army. Don't forget this. This is very important. But still, they were treated as victorious. And Nepalese army, once we disassociated ourselves from the monarchy, there was no patronage given to the Nepalese army. Nepalese army kind of became an orphan. So as chief, and in fact when I took over as chief, Nepalese army was kind of international pariah. So I had to convince the people of Nepal and the international community, including you all, that Nepalese army really belongs to the people of Nepal. This is the only national army that we have. It has its own history and tradition, the prestige and pride that it has earned over the years. And the oldest army, in fact, in the region. I am proud to say that. I don't know whether that would be digestible to you all or not. That's what I feel. But then, this is an army which became a leader. So as chief, I had to convince my soldiers and their immediate families that I am here to protect you all, come what may. That is why I sacrificed all my weekends, almost all weekends, my Tihar and Dasai, the greatest festival of Hindus, spending my days and nights with my soldiers, sleeping with them, eating with them, playing with them, to make sure that no one, particularly not the party maintaining armed elements, can lay its hand on it. Because finally it was only the Nepalese army that was left as an obstacle to reach their goal. And the goal is to impose one-party, Pol Potarian type of dictatorship. Only yesterday, the ex-Prime Minister, Mr. Prachanda, declared it publicly that come May 28th, and we will capture the state. That is the call that I received today. Now what do you do? Are we prepared to accept that? As far as I am concerned, the geopolitical location of